Yeah? So it's easy to say, let's take a look from Google Earth and do a 3D rotation on it. We gotta do this on the site. That's the reason why we didn't pick a site in West Palm or in Cooper City. It's close by around the corner. So what we're going to do is, parking apparently on the site will be a problem. So around 3:30, 3:45, I think we can do this. It takes 15 minutes to set us up on there. We're going to, can't park here, can't really park here. I would suggest that we sneak in with carpool and have 1 or 2 or 3 cars somewhere here, you know, and then meet and walk all this. And to get also have a quick walk here and here to get a feel what's the neighboring properties. Under the assumption that we are very respectful, that we are not being a nuisance, and run fast as possible when the police shows up. No, don't. This was a school project, so we're going to be calm. I got once greeted by a guy with a gun and a dog. It's not so cool. Wildfire research in Idaho.
In Davy?
Huh?
In
What?
Davy?
No, in Idaho.
Oh.
Like, what do you want?
No,
My property.
in Davy.
Yeah. We have permission of the owner to be on the site, so there shouldn't be a problem. Alright. What I want to do in the about an hour each is where I want to go through these 2 kind of buzzwords here, 2 slides. And there are different ways to do this. And I want to go with you for the understanding of that assessment of the legal environment is a do and do not.
Are you going to email us this?
I can share those few slides. Yeah.
Can you put it on camera?
This is my interpretation, my words on if you do regulatory analysis that includes zoning regulations, land use regulations, other regulations that constrain you in your non-physical world. Yeah. And that basically are the almost like commandments. You do not, you do, or you do not. Tells you what's allowed, permissible, and what's not allowed. It sets boundaries and limitations. Yeah? Most zoning ordinances or policy ordinances in towns and cities and in counties are written like you shall or almost shall not. Yeah? Giving this like wiggle room. It's not really definite, but somewhat definite. What I want you to understand as part of this process, and again, there's somewhat a section in a chapter you guys need to produce. We'll make adjustments in terms of the larger groups now, and take a look at how we're going to do this in terms of personal assessment. What I call here the non-physical situation, zoning and land uses. What's the jurisdiction? Well, based on the address. What's the address right now? Which jurisdiction are we dealing with? City of Davie. What jurisdiction are we dealing as well? Broward County, to a certain extent. Huh? Which jurisdiction are we dealing as well?
Florida.
State of Florida.
United States.
Yeah, and NASA has to say something about the Space Force.
European Union.
Yeah. So I doubt that NASA is going to say something with us, but FAA has some saying in this.
Water Management District.
Wait, let's do the airport. The FAA might have to say something about what we want to put on this property if the town has not implemented that already. Building heights, yeah, because you're in an active approach area from Fort Lauderdale Airport. Then talking about environmentals. If Broward County doesn't do the environmental already, you might want to deal with the utilities and environmental districts, the water management districts, utilities, Florida Power and Light, FPL is probably the company serving us. Utilities in general should be a quick look at. Do we need to account for utilities? How should we account for utilities right now? What's the basic question we need to raise?
Water and sewer.
Water, sewer, gas, electric.
To see if they're already
If they are already on site. If they are on site and functional on site. For the capacity of the views we envision. Yeah? Because certain users might incline specific amounts of power or water or sewer. Yeah? I wouldn't run a brewery on a property that only gives me an inch connection. You need more water for that. I don't know who was laughing, but this is a serious issue for brew houses. Yeah? Serious issues for brew houses because they need to have constant pressure on the line. Yeah? It's one thing. So, utilities in place or not, it's part of the assessment, part of the due diligence process. If they are not on there, we should make note of that. Yeah? Let's say an example, if you consider a restaurant business as part of the users on site. Most restaurants, commercial restaurants, are cooking with gas. Are you going to have a gas hookup, a line in the ground, or are you dependent on a propane gas, natural gas tank on the backyard? On the site planning component, the design component, if you do that tank and then also the trash, you have to put that probably into a screened compartment. Hide it from the visuals. Huh? So every little tiny bit of what you take for granted, we are going to investigate, hey, does this make sense? Do we need to do that? I would pretty much say a natural gas hookup line, you might not need for an office space or maybe residential. Typically residential, what you see here in apartments are not the high-end crazy gas stoves, they are standard electric. Yeah? So some of those questions you have to find answers or consider. And sometimes you just have to raise the question to show that you worked on it. Yeah? Same thing like, have you considered mixed use? Well, yeah, but after a certain time of discussion, we decided to go a different route. What have been the criteria why you broke that route? Yeah? And that's fine with me. And I bet with you, a good judge will, if you present that almost as a prepared answer, you're going to be fine. Yeah? If mixed use is always coming up as a question. I would ask that. Wrote my dissertation on mixed use. I would ask you why didn't you consider it? Yeah? I also know the pain of it. Alright, so jurisdiction, you kind of get an idea. From the short lessons and exposure to the project, what's the current land use right now? Current land use is?
Vacant. Farm.
It's vacant. It's zoned as what?
Recreational.
It's within the area. That's the first step we're going to do today. It's within the REC designation, but it has a sub-level to it. So for the next 5 minutes, I want you guys, you have all the laptop, at least one laptop? Worst case, use the computer here. I want you guys to look up code for the town of Davie, Florida. And you want to particularly look for an explanation on what does the RWT means within the Recreational Activity Center code. Because this is kind of telling you what is down the road, if you trickle that down, what's permissible underneath that. Because the description on the web page said, well, you could do this for retail, office, mixed use, multifamily, and medical, but you're still in the RAC. So for the next 5 minutes, we're going to try to find a solution to that question. Doesn't have to be perfect, but there's actually a web page that shows you the code of the town of Davie. Might be called the ordinances and policies on the town's web page. Yeah? And the reason why everyone should do this, or at least working in teams, look over each other's shoulders, is you have to make a decision in your team, and we'll take time for that, who's going to take care of the regulatory analysis, who's going to take care of the site analysis, because those are the two sections you need to be set and developed at first. And then you can go into market analysis and financial feasibility. because you need to make a decision down that track. What type of development do you want? Therefore, you need to see what's the market potentials. So the person that goes with financial analysis depends on the 3-4 folks who did the work before. It's a pipeline, with dependencies, really brutal dependencies. So whoever goes first needs to be fast and good. Next, fast and good until the financial team hits it. Yes, please.
So obviously we had 4 job descriptions, and now our teams have expanded a little further.
We're going to mingle that.
I know you said you touched on how we're going to fix that. My question is, which of these jobs would you say have the most workload? So maybe one solution to this is have 2 teammates work together and say the financial analyst,
Hey,
because it's a,
can I give a suggestion with that?
yeah.
Regardless of who does what, we still need to spend time overseeing each other's work.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But as far as for grading wise, and how we determine who is who, do you
I would go by competences. I would go by competences and say, if you never had a class that drills you down on investment and financial analysis, like if you never had so far Fred Foggy in this program in a class, you should not touch the financials as a prime offer. That's my personal recommendation. If you have a graphics, if you have a design, architecture, landscaping background, or work in that field, you might want to consider market and or actually site analysis, because as part of site, you might end up actually doing a sketch and a proposal to the team and say this is doable with the setbacks, with the rules. Yeah? I would, for newbies, I would suggest to dig into the regulatory part. That's my personal advice, because it's fairly straightforward. You almost can run a checklist on, is this use permissible? What are the guidelines? Setbacks, overlays. Can you build to the lot line or not? Does this follow the transit corridor regulations or not? But you have to act fast, because that should be done within a few days, 10 days, I think is the timeline. So you have to run this. I know that the timeline puts certain pressures on different facets. And I give that as a bonus in terms of the grading. Yeah? Does this answer your question?
somewhat?
There are different complexities in those tasks. And different experience levels will help you to manage those tasks. That's another reason for teamwork, because you have different experience levels.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, between, let's say, Carlos and Grant, I would consider Grant probably going for more design component in the project, design questions, versus maybe Carlos running this as a financial analyst. To give two people as an example.
Right.
Are you guys in the same team?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. All right. Found it yet?
Yeah.
Look it up.
This stuff?
That's a start.
You can't print here, can we?
No.
And
There's a printer in the hallway there.
what is it called?
That's
I've
only
never
because
used it. I just went to the printing station.
then we're gonna search.
All right. How did you find that? There are two ways to do this.
Broward County Property Assessment website.
County Property Assessor's website. You will find this.
BCPA.
You will find this. This is the assessment sheet for their property. Did you look that up?
Yeah, I did, but I'm able to go in, but I checked the city zoning codes, the county land use.
What you also could do is, where was it?
It says vacant commercial.
Where was it? Planning and zoning.
It says David Regional Research and High Tech District, West District, Regional Activity Center.
Yeah.
That's all it says. RAC RTW.
And you have here the code of ordinance.
What's the other?
650.
6650.
650. That's 650.
So I was aiming for this, as you go into the Alright, do you have a did you find a definition for REC?
Yeah.
What's the definition for REC?
General activities.
General activities, and what else? Do you find that read the whole paragraph that says,
Regional activity center.
Promote regional significant development.
which one are you on? You're on the map.
Yeah, but he said,
You're on the map too. You have the text, Munico? I didn't bookmark it. So if you would go for REC, regional activity districts here.
Yes.
So it's the problem on screen by screen by screen by screen.
And it's just technology district though.
Yeah. So you go down here, we are in the R, this one, yeah?
Yes.
West, the first one, yeah? So then you actually would read up on this and say, okay, what's the purpose of this? Yeah? Get history of that, terminology, how does this explain, what are you allowed to do? And also here, build to line means one important thing. You can hit the property line. You don't have to do a setback in that specific way, unless it's otherwise noted. TOD means transit-oriented development, so they are looking for transit solutions if possible.
Wouldn't the setback be different for each kind of type of building you want to do?
If noted in the legal text. That's the reason why we're flying the quick overview on this text. And the regulatory analysis would have to talk about that a little bit more in depth. Yeah? But it's good enough to say, based on the zoning ordinances and name the ordinance, you're making the following judgment, proposing the following code of use. Yeah? So the interesting part here is also the purpose and the intent. Yeah? This is not yet completely legal text, but this is a justification that says, well, I want to redevelop multimodal, pedestrian-friendly, and interconnected mixed use as an example. Yeah? That helps with your justifications of maybe the uses you want to put up on this place. One thing you need to understand is that the city here is looking forward to increase density, but in a meaningful and sustainable way. If you go through the webpage of the city of Devl, you also see a lot of that in the transit-oriented development section, a lot of sketchbooks of bad example, good example. Like egress, enter and exit of parcels. They give an example of 6 parcels. Each one has their entrance zone, enter and off, on and off for the property, versus a more coordinated way, maybe one main entrance and on and off area for all the parcels in the property. But you have to make an arrangement where and how you guide the traffic on those combined sections. If you look at an example, University Drive, there are a bunch of small centers. Yeah? Starts with Whole Foods, then you have the Starbucks and the pizza place. Yeah? Then you have like Outback and the auto shop, the new one. Yeah? But if you look carefully on their layout, maps, they give, where are we at? University. They don't have separate for each business entrances to University Drive. Yeah? They are channeling this in terms of their layouts. Yeah? It's different versus if you would just go up, you have larger parcels with one main entrance all over the place. Yeah? So consider that traffic flow will be part of the judgment on the site.
all all property owners gotta agree for something like that to happen, though, right? Or
Yeah,
does
the
that
magic word is agreement and easement. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Then again, you go farther down, definition of transit-oriented development in that sector. Yeah? And we do have the code for this itself. Copy and paste.
Yeah.
Muni code. Most municipalities in the US are in one big web page and you can look them up. That's a really nice feature. So that specification itself we didn't find. So you have to dig through and go for it. There's a search bar. Well, it's the RET we wanted. So there might be actually, see this is actually from the web page from LoopNet. So there might be actually a title in here. What is this? Where were we? Urban form. Yeah? Bring buildings to the roadway, ensure proper proportionating, and require continuous building facades to enclose. That's different from setbacks, parking in front. Yeah? And if you scroll down, I give you a little bit more time to explore this. It should be actually which section I think 12. Something we need to take a look at is site development standards. Yeah? Where it tells you what's the intention, and the good part is it gives you an idea how this should look like. Yeah? And it will tell you the standard, how you comply to that with the measurements for the sector. So if you look at here at the RTW, that's what we should consider. 0 to 5 steps for the stop frontages. Yeah? Minimum percentage of building frontage, we should consider maybe 65%. Yeah? However, we need to clarify if we are on a TOD corridor or not. Do we need to justify for both street fronts of this? Yeah? And again, back to your question, Robert. This is almost a checklist of things yes and no's you can do. The important part also what you need to consider is what could you do as development? And I did not bookmark that, so we need to find that. I might give you just additional more time to go through it so you have seen this by yourself. Is what can you actually do on this side as development?
To be honest, to stay focused on what we can do versus what we could potentially explore, going beyond the can do.
Part on the regulatory analysis is the do's and the don'ts.
Yeah.
And there are two different ways to approach that. Zoning codes are usually written as a way of you are not allowed to do the following. And that has changed over time. Now they are more open-minded and they're saying, well, in that designated zone, this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. So depending on the way you approach the topic, is it easier to set the boundaries with what you're not allowed to do and rule that out versus, oh, I want to do mixed use. Oh, no, I can't do mixed use. I want to do medical use. Oh, no, you can't. So again, the posting description itself says there are 4 or 5 uses possible on that site. So one thing I would go for is, if it says office, I would dig in, what are the constraints for you to do office? It's saying about multifamily. What are your constraints to do this approach with multifamily? So if you want to keep life a little bit simple, take those uses that are posted on the webpage from by the seller and test for them. And you, again, it's 1.25 acre. So you're not going to put a hospital on there if you consider medical. Or you might consider
urgent care.
an urgent care is actually a good one. Would urgent care make sense if you look at the market? Let's reach out. Urgent care, would it make sense in the market with large hospital right now just within the mile, 2 miles up north? With a research hospital being built in the next 4 or 5 years here on campus. But if you consider urgent care, well, what are the regulations for urgent care on a site like this? And for the market folks, where are the other urgent cares? And who are running those? Who is running those urgent cares? Like what kind of insurance companies or medical companies running that? Yeah. So multifamily. Are there types of multifamily available already?
Yeah, they are.
What would you make a difference for that? Are you going to just follow the market, or would you make a difference? Yeah, there's apartment and other condo stuff around that area. So student housing, designated student housing because of the close by campuses would be an interesting thought. Yeah? Not renting out 2,500 square foot as a unit.
What about entertainment?
Entertainment could be a fun thing to do.
For students?
What do you have in mind?
Huh? Retail and office. There are different variations on retail and office. Well, University Drive is a big retail corridor, if you look at that. So if you propose retail on that side, I would expect you guys to show what's on University Drive and on Davy Road. Because Little Davy Road, for those who are not familiar with the area,
Is there a traffic light on that corner?
yeah, Davy Road here, you might see this in a different view, is full of little shops. Yeah? Now you up to 84. It's not just Nexus as a gun range and all that, but they're full of little shops. You would be surprised who is going there and what do they consume. Like down where we're at right now. Here down to Griffin. This is one big corridor. Not as big as you would consider Las Olas. It has like almost, for me, it has the like Midwestern Wild West town. Yeah. Sections in Davie where I don't know if I'm in Oregon or if I'm in Florida. I truly recommend just to take a drive through to certain areas. Like there's a rodeo ground. And the way the houses are built and look, it's like this could be somewhere in the Rockies, believe it or not. Yeah? It's like, ooh, this could be Idaho. Yeah? Almost. So very interesting flair of town. Does this mean that you are putting up 3 floors of completely glass facade in that area on our side? Maybe. Yeah. It's a cost and an appeal thing. So again, I'm throwing out ideas. I actually have some of those ideas. I have site plans. I don't know the status of those site plans. If those have been proposals that never really did fly. Yeah. Medical facility, I actually have a site plan. I literally put a building on the place and started calculating on it. Yeah? The reason why I don't give you this before at the end of today is I want you to make comments like him. Medical. Let's do doctor's office there. Dentist office. Think about what's the daily population around this area. What's the traffic count, where people go and come from. Yeah? So there's a mix between what could be put in place versus what's the market already. You have to have this kind of interconnected thinking already in place. All right. I want, what are you doing? If you're looking at the permissible uses for building footprint and regulations, here, I would take a look at what would be available in your zoning code in terms of design for the next 10 minutes. Let's make this a little bit more. I would like to have every team go through zoning and regulations. I know this is more than a 10-minute job. I would like to have you come up with an understanding, first understanding on is retail feasible, office feasible, mixed use. Pick 2 out of that kind of list we had on here on the bottom, put it back on. And get a first feel as part of the exploring factors for your regulatory analysis. Is this something I want to go for? Different approach. It's not, don't want to show I can't do it. No. For some reason you built your team and you already have like an idea. Multifamily was one, if you're here. Was it? Someone. So take a look at that and say, what would be ideal conditions under the current zoning regulations for me as the developing team on, let's say, multifamily? Test 2 options out of the 4 or 5 that are in there. The next 10 minutes, have a conversation about that. And the reason why we're doing this as a teamwork rather than you doing the analysis at the end as a write-up is it's team building. You will find a way of how to convey the message between your partners. So go ahead for that. That's to just about 10 until 1:30.
Thank you.
So we'll probably just, we can go back here. Back here.
Guess we'll come to you.
Yeah, we'll just come meet you guys.